Well, we're here today with Reverend Margaret Coleman. Thank you, Reverend Coleman, for joining me this afternoon.
Awesome.
Well, let me just tell you a little bit about Reverend Margaret Coleman. Presently resides in Westchester County, New York. She is an elementary school educator, an ordained minister, a podcast host, and a published author. She has earned degrees from various colleges and universities over the course of her life in criminal justice, education, and ministry. Reverend Coleman is a sought after preacher and teacher specifically on issues that face women spiritually and emotionally. Her ministry message encompasses a holistic approach through the Word of God. Reverend Coleman is the CEO and founder of Brand Yourself Ministries, LLC. She travels extensively hosting women empowerment conferences. She hosts a weekly podcast, Reverend Margaret Monday Moments, which can be found on various streaming platforms. She also ministers daily on Facebook and Instagram, a daily inspirational moment that brings dialogue, encouragement, and consultation to women via social media. Reverend Coleman is committed to her call to the Christian ministry and the preaching of the gospel. She is dedicated to the ministry of those who are disenfranchised and marginalized. Her commitment to God and God's people is led and directed by the Holy Spirit. She is known as a woman of faith and a sojourner for justice. So thank you, Reverend Margaret Coleman. And
Thank
I'm
you
bringing
for
you here today.
having
Yes.
me. I'm glad to be here. Glad
Thank
to be
you.
here. Absolutely.
Well, I am a reader of one of your books, The Preacher and the First Lady, which you have here available. However, I know that you've written several books. How many books have you written so
Well,
far?
so far two that are published. Three are on the desk, if you want to
Okay.
say that. Yeah. So I have Mind, Body, and Spirit, which is the first book that was published, and that was published actually doing right before COVID. And so that is a 30-day devotional, which I said part two is coming out. Hopefully by the fall or winter, that will be coming out. It is actually the Reverend Margaret moments that you read every day. So that book is an inspirational. It's a 30-day just go to, and it's separated in that context: mind, body, and spirit. 10-day of devotions and prayers, and a part for you to do your own meditation. So that was birthed out of just Reverend Margaret moments, and that's how Reverend Margaret moments got started, because I started writing prayers, and God just blessed me to continue that on and to journal. And we can talk a little bit about that, about, the journaling ministry that I encourage women and men to do, because it helps to empty. I always say we need to dump what we got to dump it out, got to dump it out. And writing is a great tool to do that, to get it done.
I absolutely agree. Journaling is a wonderful experience for both men and women. Let's get back to the preacher and the first lady, because I read this book, and I would like to know what inspired you to write the preacher and the first lady, and how did you come up with that book title?
Okay, so what inspired me is because what? We're both first ladies. And that was I open up the book. If you get the book, if you read the book, how this was a daunting call, right? For me, it did not come easy to settle in into that particular role. And I can't say I've settled in yet, right? I'm 22 years in, and it's still not something that I'm comfortable with as a call, because I think people think, in the household of faith, when they say first lady, it's just something that you do, but it's not. It really is a call. When I married my husband, I was already in ministry. I was already preaching, I had my degrees, and I was already doing my own thing. So I came in it with marrying a pastor with great apprehension, because I did not want people to make me feel or think that I needed to acquiesce to his call. So the preaching of the first lady is really birthed out of, listening to first ladies, talking to first ladies, just watching them from, I guess, as a child, not realizing this would be where God would have my station as an adult. but just watching and just talking to them and just talking about some of the things they go through. It, like I said, it's not easy. I laugh because, when people talked about Michelle Obama being the first lady and all that kind of stuff, because, that who represented who we were, that we could identify with. I could just imagine what she was dealing with in that context of first lady, because it is a call. It is something that, we receive when our husbands may be a pastor or going into pastoral ministry, but it's also different when you're a preacher yourself. So the title, to be honest with you, was to start talking about how you are the preacher and you're the first lady. Like you're the
Yes.
preacher and the first lady.
Hmm.
And as I began to write it that way, God just changed the direction, because the direction of the book was really supposed to be focused on women who were the preacher and the first lady. And that's not the direction he ended. That's why it took so long for that book to actually be published, because now when it was published, it was 7 years. So now I think it's like 9 years later.
Oh,
This
wow.
is this is the product, because I started out with a different concept as I was writing, but God led me a totally different way. And as you read it, when you get the book, you can understand, because then what I did, he gave me sermons. He said, no, take the sermons, because everything was directed by him. Take the sermons and then tell a story. Because I
Okay.
didn't even know those two things were going to happen, Sister Eunice. I didn't even know that those two things were going to make sense. And then when you get it and you read it, it makes all the sense in the world. So I chronicled, like I said, with women that I encountered over the years, but to protect, their space, didn't use any names, changed up some information, just
Right.
so people won't say, oh, that's me. Then they won't say, oh, that's Margaret Coleman. So I try. So a little bit of me is written into every piece except the last piece. That is Sister Elaine's story. But
Yes.
it narrates the story of women that I've met over the years, including you.
Hmm.
This just narrating stories that I've heard, and making it fit the text. And
Right.
I just thank God for that, allowing me to be able to merge that kind of concept together, because it wasn't easy. It was not easy.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I mean, like you said earlier, you said there's a character in your book that actually was one of the ladies. I'm not going to say who it is. Go get the book. But she
Right.
actually was preparing herself to marry a preacher, I believe. And some women, they don't intend to become first ladies.
No,
They may be married to a preacher, but he's not a pastor.
correct.
So in
Correct.
my situation, I married a preacher, not knowing that years later he would become a pastor. And that's a whole different
It's different. It's
different
different.
dynamic.
Right. A different call. If we want to
Yes.
keep, it's a different call. And I think sometimes women don't women in general, and whether your call is a first lady or something else, especially in the household of faith, it is just a different dynamic if the partners are not seeing the same vision at the same time. Right. So God gives the vision maybe to the spouse, whether it's a male or female, he gives a vision, make it plain. But also you need to be praying and say, well, why are you giving me the vision? Make sure that my spouse is having the vision as well. Because I've met first ladies who have said to me, seriously, God called him and not me. Right. And
Yes.
so, yeah, so they are really true to that, right? They're true to
Yes.
that. Like, so I'm not going everywhere that you go. I'm not attending every event or experience that you're going. I am not the one that's called. And
Right.
so you have to know that about yourself. You have to understand that about yourself. Your partner has to understand that,
Hmm.
that, the call has to be shaped in such a way that both parties understand what the responsibilities are. And I'm just blessed to have somebody that's understanding, to know that I can't be boxed into that first lady, as some of my characters in the book experience, the church opinion, right? They
Right.
experience church opinion and church norms that, the first lady got to wear the big hat. And, I started out with the big hat, it didn't last long, but, I just felt like, okay, I got to get the hat. I got to get the suit. I got to get the shoes, everything got to be straight, your hair got to be right, got to be weave, got to be tight. Everything got to be tight. And then as I grew in my own independence, well, reclaimed my independence. Let me say that. I reclaimed my independence. When I did that, it was such a liberating experience, but it also was a liberating experience for the women of God.
Yes.
And I think that they want to model, women in churches and women in different, different forms like to model behaviors that really reflect, or personalities that really reflect who they are. And so I think when I co-founded a ministry, Made in His Image ministry, that helped me to reclaim my space, right? So it helped me to reclaim that I am made in His image, not my husband's image, not the image of what the church says, that I'm reclaiming me. And so this book helps to narrate stories of some women, because when they get the book, they're gonna see somebody got a divorce in the book, right? Somebody got a divorce.
Yes.
Right, because she had to reclaim herself. She had to reclaim her identity, her personhood, why she was in ministry, what type of ministry she was going in. And I think this is what this book, I cried a lot, I shared a lot. Like I said, I changed names, changed locations, changed a lot of dynamics, but it does symbolize and represent some of the stories that I can share as well. So it was a labor of love for God and for myself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, a
And I
labor of
could appreciate all the time that you took to develop these different characters because each of them are different in their
yes,
own right. And when I was reading the book, I was trying to say, do I have a little piece of Lady Barbara? Am I a
right,
little Lady Michelle? Do I have a little Lady Shauna? And I was trying to identify with the characters. And that was the interesting part because when I meet first ladies, I'm always amazed at how some of them are very independent, very outspoken, and they do not fit in the box. And I
right,
can appreciate that. And they don't want to be a shadow of their spouse. They don't want to be what the congregation believes that they should be. They don't want to be told, "Oh, well, you're first lady, so now you're going to be a deaconess." Or
right,
you're first lady, and now you need to sit up here with us. Or
right,
or why don't you teach Sunday school? Or why don't you do Bible study? And
right.
all of these things. And you're sitting there like, well, I don't believe that's what I'm called to do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
It's like other people have their own opinion of
right.
what you should be actually doing in the household of faith. So I appreciate all those different characters, some very strong characters. So I encourage everyone to get the book and
Get the book.
see where you fit in. You don't even have to be a first lady. You
Mhm.
can be a deaconess. You can be just a very prominent person who does has ministry in the church, whatever
Amen.
that may be. And when you was writing this book, did you have any hidden messages that you wanted to get across to the readers?
Yes. Well, the first story with Lady Barbara and incest aligned itself with my thesis, right? I did my thesis, my master's is in theology. I have two masters, one in divinity, one in theology. But I talked about incest in the Black church and how that has been such a hidden conversation, even in the Black community in itself, and how it does exist.
Yes.
So I started with something really tough, a really tough storyline, because I wanted to bring attention to that it happens in our community too, right? And so I went to seminary with a young woman who was just coming into her understanding of what trauma she had lived through as a
Mhm.
child. And it kind of helped me with because she was one of the people that I interviewed for my thesis, about how to really forgive yourself. And it's not forgiving yourself that you did anything wrong, but forgiving yourself of not having to carry the weight of shame, and how she chronicles how she had to go through that, but then how the church almost abandoned her Because, in our communities, it's always, oh, you being fast, or you being forward, or you need to stop doing this, but you're the victim. And
Right.
so her having to, dealing with the being promiscuous when she was older, and a teenager, having multiple partners. And so, and what that looked like back from the rural perspective, because I'm from the South,
Okay.
her child was actually sent away, and just like Barbara.
Yes.
And so then you had to come into understanding that it's hitting me in my face. Like it's there now. I gotta deal with it. And so that was very personal. It was very emotional to write, because I remember talking to my friend and how much pain it cost her. And then, then I went back and looked at my thesis and what I wrote and where text I came out of, and, just did a lot of soul searching. But that's the one that really I wanted to put up front, because I think we don't talk about sexual abuse in the church enough for congregations to understand. Well, we don't talk about it at all.
We don't.
Right. So we talk about mental health, but we won't push it to conversations that really need to be happening. And so I really wanted to talk about that. Barrenness, wanted to talk about that, and
Yes.
how,
With
women,
Lady Michelle.
Lady Michelle, and how women, you always I learned when one of the things they taught us when I took the hospital CP, and I forgot how you title it, but anyway, Christian education course, and they said never ask people if they have children. Don't ask them that. Let them volunteer that information. Like if you go into the hospital and you're having conversations as a
Yeah.
pastor, don't ask people that, because you don't know if you are talking to someone that couldn't have children.
Hmm.
And usually when people can't have children, they're not going to say, no, I don't have, that I couldn't bear children. They're just going to say, no, I don't have any children. But you're still making a trigger occur that is not necessary.
Right.
So there are ways that we can ask questions without being so intrusive that it triggers an individual to feel pain or shame, right? And so but barrenness, right? When I was young, I was told that I probably would never have children,
Hmm.
right? I would never have children. And so I had always had this thing, okay, well, I won't have children, I'll just adopt. And lo and behold, God bless me
Right.
to bear a baby, have a wonderful little daughter, have a 30-year-old in another couple of days. And then Frank had three, and I was blessed to be another mom. So God
Yeah.
just kind of brought that thing together. He said, "Oh no, you're gonna have children.
Yep.
You're gonna bear a lot of children. You're gonna bear a lot of children." And I'm laughing and you're laughing. But then think about what bearing means. Like, what does it really mean to have children, right? And so if you look at that story, Michelle, y'all get that book, you're gonna see how Michelle had to really become another mom, to become that second mom, and how she did it, and how it wasn't easy for her, right? Because
Right.
this is my second marriage with we don't use the word stepchildren, but I
Right.
have my other children, and
Yes.
how to play into that role as second mom, and how to narrate your understanding of what that looks like, especially if you couldn't have children of your own. So they're
Yes.
going to enjoy her story, because it's a lived reality. I think for Barbara and Michelle's story, it's more of a lived reality of what women go through. And you see a lot of first ladies, more than what you think, that don't have children. The pastor
Yes.
lady don't have children. And more than it might have been his medical issue, and it
Hmm.
may have been hers, or it may be that they decided we just don't want children.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
That
it's
we
yeah, and the people in the church don't understand how some of the questions they ask of our brothers and sisters is, like you said, a trigger,
Yeah.
and they always say, well, when is she going to have a baby? Or
Yes.
when is she going to get married?
Oh,
We don't even realize that we are doing this in the church.
yeah. And we're having that conversation, and like you said, it's a trigger, because you
Hmm.
don't know what the backstory is. You don't know if
Yes.
the young woman or the man was engaged before and they had a horrible breakup, and now they're like, nobody's on the table. I'm not dealing with it. I'm never gonna get engaged again. So then it becomes triggers. And if you're not there to pick up those pieces with them, leave some questions alone, because there's a way that you can find out information without having people feel uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
I'm kind of in between when we talk about singles ministry, like who should lead those ministries, how those ministries should be led in the body of Christ, because it shouldn't be just a social club. It also needs to be talking about things like things that they're going through. I was single for 7 years from divorce to the time I met Frank. And so I took a vow of celibacy and all of that
Mhm.
as well. So I'm vibrant, loving the Lord, but I'm still vibrant. But
Right.
I had to have my accountability partners to keep me in check, right? So that I would not fall short of the glory. So there are things that I think, even in single ministries, who's teaching it? Are you bringing in people like me, like you, who have been single? Are you talking
Mhm.
to them, on a level that they understand that do you want children? Because those are decisions, that for women, I think we make early on, right? Even if we have
Yes.
people in our ear telling us about kids, I think most of us make that decision early on, whether or not we want to be moms. And being able to articulate that well with a partner is going to be very important. When I met Frank, because I was unable to have any more children. So I said to him when we started dating, I said, now listen, I can't have any more children. Because if you're looking, because we were both young. So if you're looking to have some more kids, I may not be the woman for you. You might love me to pieces, but you need to be true to you if that's something. He was like, I got three. That's enough.
Absolutely, but at least you were honest from the
Yeah,
beginning. That's so
I was.
important. We have to be honest when we're in these relationships and let the other person know, I'm done having children. I don't want any more children. How is this going to affect our relationship? And be sure that you looking that person in the eye and understand that if the answer is I want more children, then maybe you might have to step away from that relationship. Es-
Absolutely. 100%.
Especially for if one of the two involved does have no children.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
so no one
right.
has any children in this relationship. So that's a big decision.
Absolutely.
I came into a blended family as well. My husband had 4 children, has 4 children, and I had one. So we became a
Wow.
family of 5. So
Right.
there was that blended family as well. So that's very important, very
And I
important.
think you and I should co-author a book, because I don't think Black church does not have a lot of information about what blended families do and are, and how to articulate that kind of space. Because it is a space to articulate and a space to go through. Especially
Absolutely.
because we had little ones when I married. Well, not little ones, but I had a teenager, had one that was graduating from college, and the baby who was 2, and then Ellis. So, and she was
Okay.
smack dab in the middle, and then trying to blend all of those personalities together. But then there were 3 girls. The son, he was fine. He was cooking with grease. But them 3 girls, oh my goodness. I was like, oh
Blending, blended families is not something that's talked about too
no,
often in the church,
no,
especially
not at
with a
all.
pastor. They want that traditional married a wife and all of the children are from that pastor and that woman. But that's
Absolutely.
not the reality.
No,
That is
no.
not the reality. And it's funny because my husband's name is Malcolm
Right.
Hudson, and my son is Malcolm. So the assumption when the introductions was done with that was, biologically Malcolm's child. And I said, God got jokes. I have a I have a son named Malcolm, and I marry a preacher with a first name Malcolm. Ain't that
He's
something?
hilarious.
It is. So you talked about Lady Barbara, Lady Michelle, but there's 3 other ladies as well, Lady Tanya, Shanna, and Elaine, and all of their
Lane.
stories are so unique. Do you want to talk a little bit about them?
Yeah, let me talk about Tanya first. So Tanya is married to a power. I call them my power couple. They were my
Hmm.
power couple. They were the ones that were going to, burn their city down with the Holy Ghost. But they became discord because Tanya was increasing in her ministry gifts. And it is similar to Elaine's story. If you look at Elaine's, and
Yes.
Elaine is a narrated, is a true person. She's true, 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 true. She lives out in New Jersey, but just knowing that those two stories, when you read those, are parallel. Just understanding that sometimes it's just not going to work out because jealousy is in the house. And I think, like we've been saying, if conversations are had early on, you could probably pick up certain things that are just not going to settle right.
Right.
That you're going to see that it's not, that competition will show up. You got to pay attention to what I always tell people, since I'm an educator, words matter. So
Right.
even in the dating process, there, as they say, red flags that
Yes.
may come up that you got to pay attention to and not ignore. So I think with her story, the power couple story kind of, hit home, because you see a lot of these celebrity pastors, but when you start unearthing some of the stuff, there's a lot of discord that is happening in some of our local churches.
Mm.
And if you're a reader of spirits, if you're a reader of personalities, you can almost tell, like Frank, Frank and I could be arguing all with the church, and I'm
Yes.
still mad when I get in the church. So they
Yes.
already know. Oh, Reverend Margaret done said something, and Pastor done made her mad, and she walking, because I'm not gonna hide that, because that's
Okay.
a fact. And I think that's the thing, is that we try to keep so much from being real that when things do become unglued, people are like, what? Oh my God, I thought they were always happy. No, sometimes he makes the coffee wrong. And I'm
Right.
mad because it ain't strong enough all the way to church. Like, yo.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
think for Tanya, she had to figure out, you really are jealous of me. You really have a problem. And the whole time she's celebrating him, celebrating him, celebrating,
Yes.
and he's not reciprocating that behavior.
Right.
And so I think a lot of women and men could identify with that story. And then Shayna, just understanding how, I use the sermon, the three domino effect, like one thing
Yes.
happens, then another thing happens, and then another thing happens, and how the crisis, when it comes into our lives, how best are we being able to handle the crisis, especially when God is going to bless you with something, right? And then
Hmm.
crisis happen and a tragedy. But I think it's a beautiful love story of how they overcame the crisis that were in their lives, and how her husband, even what he was going through, he was so supportive of her making the moves that God was calling her to.
Hmm.
And I celebrate that, because I think, I always say iron sharpens iron, and iron
Yes.
sharpens iron even in marriages, right? So when a husband can celebrate the wife and the wife can celebrate the husband, it just makes everything so much harmonious, and it just seems like you can, feel that vibe when you're in church. Like they know they're solid, because tragic
Yes.
stuff. It's crazy. Frank 2 years ago got diagnosed with colon cancer, and
Oh.
it was like immediate. Like he went, had the check, had the colonoscopy done, called me back, told me, he has a mass. They need to get it out within 2 weeks. So that story for me was even more personal too, because I know what that feels like, having to, make sure the church is straight, make sure I'm going to my job every day, make sure he's okay, right? Looking at politics, I was running for office at the time, same time all of this was going on. He was recovering from major surgery,
Right.
and just having to negotiate all those spaces that I had to negotiate. I really went back and had to read her story again. Like, I don't know how in the world am I supposed to be able to survive this, but I'm here. And then concluding with Elaine's story, which is probably the most powerful one in there, because it is she's a real person. I always say she's a real
Yes.
person. Because she showed up at my book launch. She came and she told her story, but just what she had to overcome in an abusive marriage, emotional abuse, and ended up in divorce with a child with severe disabilities, but she is doing wonderfully well. But just how she's had to, and she's a doctor now, like she's a doctor and she's doing her thing, and she's a preacher, and just how she had to narrate all of that as a first lady. And she talked,
Exactly.
right? Going to church dressed up, looking cute, but catching hell at home. Like
Right.
That's her story. And so I'm looking forward to people reading this and inviting me to their churches so we can have these kind of conversations because it's going to be necessary. And I'm just, bless God that, he is, creating in my brain to get some other things done with this book. Because when I prayed over it and I had people to pray over it, I know this is going to bless many women of God and men of God too, because I don't like to leave my brothers out. Because I think my brothers need to become readers, real readers, readers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because
Let's talk about,
we
yeah.
90% of the congregation. You need to know what we're saying, what our story is.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your writing process. I know you're very busy. You're an educator, you're a wife, you're a mom. What does your writing day look like?
Well, what I do is I carve out when I'm doing this kind of writing, like when I do the Reverend Margaret moments every
Hmm.
morning, that's my devotion. Like I literally get up at 5 a.m., read the text, and I just begin to write. There is nothing formal, nothing. God just begins to pour it in, and I
Okay.
pour it out to you. When I'm writing books, I journal. So like I told you, hopefully the devotion will come out the end of the year, the second part of it. So book 2, Mind, Body, and Spirit, A Moment with God. Those are all the Reverend Margaret moments. So it's really not much I would have to do, just section it off so make sure it fits where it needs to fit. But writing this book, I literally took sabbaticals. Like I
Okay.
would take sabbaticals to write. So, and then I did not try to do like 500, like 30 things with it. I would take one sermon, critique the sermon that I was going to use, and then I would pray about the woman, and then I would just begin to write. I mean, there's so many rewrites to this process; it's unbelievable, right? So I think sabbatical time was the time that helped me to get it from my thoughts to a publisher because I had to take that time. And that's what I would tell anybody that's going to become a writer, that you got to commit to sabbatical time. And your sabbatical time can be a weekend, right? It can be a weekend that I am going to hear, I'm going to sit still, and I'm going to write. Now, I had the writer's block, didn't know what that was until I
Hmm.
had to talk to my publisher because she was waiting on chapters for me to read. She said, "You have writer's block. Take a drive, take a walk, get out the house, move around, do whatever you need to do. Just move away from it because nothing was coming. Nothing was
Right.
flowing. And I couldn't get my words right. Couldn't figure out if this is direction that God wanted me to go as I'm writing. But you gotta be intentional. Let me just use that word. You gotta be intentional when you're writing. You got to make sure that you're setting aside time. Like so August is usually our time to go away. Frank does revivals in August. That's my sabbatical month. So my sabbatical month is in August. That's the time that I will set aside whatever I'm going to do. If it's writing, I commit to writing. If it's more journaling, I commit to journaling. So that's what I do. August is my sabbatical time. That's the time that I am seriously focused on what God has assigned me to do. And it always pans out. I get a lot done in August. When you ask me every other time, it's definitely, I have to be intentional and carving out that time to make sure that I get it done.
That is so true. We definitely have to carve out the time to get it done. I
Yeah,
agree 100%. Now, in the future, do you have any upcoming books? Because I think The Preacher and the First Lady has a part two
it
after
does.
reading the first book. So,
It does.
what's in the works in the future
Okay,
for
so
The Preacher and the First Lady?
before the preacher, the first lady, I am in conversation with making this a play. So we're in conversation. I have a producer that we've been talking about how this is going to be done. Well, screenwriter. She's a screenwriter, and so her and I have been talking. So we're trying to get something on paper so that we can get it done. So hopefully by here I go the fall, I will be in a church near you. So we're trying to get this off into real, like so people can really see it. She's been phenomenal. I mean, she read it, she knew it could be a play, and she just began to write. So her and I are in conversations. We already have people that we're looking at as far as actors, how it's going to be set up. So that's the first thing you're going to see. And I
Okay.
pray that we will have a debut by December. That would be perfect for me. And then we'll start traveling. We'll start traveling to churches and areas. And I'm just claiming God said that it's going to be the United States of America. That's where we're going. So I
Yes.
just know this is supposed to be that way. This book is supposed to be at a church near you. It's not, it's not supposed to just be sitting on your shelf. You need to see it in real time. And so after that's done, then you'll get your part two, Sister Eunice.
It's like I was left with there's like a little cliffhanger on one of the ladies. I was like, okay. Well, Reverend Margaret, we are so glad that you decided to spend some time with us
Thank you for
today.
inviting
I,
me.
yes, and I want everyone to go out and buy the book. How can they get the book, Reverend Margaret
They
Coleman?
can get the book through Amazon. They can get the book now. I don't know if they boycotting Amazon, but you can get it from Amazon. You can get it
Okay.
from Christian Faith Publishers. I'm
Okay.
on Christian Faith Publishers website. You can get it from Barnes and Noble website, Walmart's website. But yeah, you can get it from Christian Faith Publisher, may be the quickest way to get it at this point. But because I know we're going through a whole lot of political stuff. So, but I would suggest you go ahead and get the book. Here it goes. Yep, yep, yep. There it is. There
Yes.
it is. There it is. There it is.
The
Yay.
preacher and the
And
first
the first
lady.
lady. I'm so excited about
And
the
how
reading.
can someone book you and invite you to their church, their event, do a book
Oh,
talk?
let's see. Let's see. I'm gonna see if I can do this.
How can
If
they
I
get in touch with you?
They can get in touch with me by coming. Well, let me give you my Gmail first. Reverend Margaret C at gmail.com. That's how you get my booking information. And then let me give you my number. My
Okay.
number is, I have to go to you caught me off guard. Let me
That's
give you,
okay. We're
yeah.
going to have this information posted.
Awesome, 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 awesome. Let me give you that. Hold on just a moment. Yeah. Of course, now I be acting like I can't do technology. That's really cute.
It's okay.
Yeah, I got it. I got you right here. Okay. So yeah, so we definitely want people to buy the book, but definitely go to Christian Faith Publishing. I am blessed that God allowed me because a lot of people like to do self-publishing. I'm just not one to do that. I really want to get it done. So for bookings, I gave you the email address,
Yes.
but the phone number is 914-689-4824. And Samantha is my assistant, and she
Yes.
will take your information, and we will work you out. Yep.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
everyone go out and get The Preacher and the First Lady as well as her other books as well. They're all fantastic. I have to read the next book as well. And invite her to your church, to your women's group, to your conference. Oh, and you have a conference coming up in
Yes.
July. Can you tell
July,
us a little
Heal
bit
Me
about
Now
that?
Restored. Part
Yes.
two.
July. So I'm also going to include that information for our upcoming women's conference in July. And we
Please.
look forward to the play.
Yes, I cannot wait for that. Now
We say
that,
yes and amen.
yes, and amen. I can't
Amen.
wait. I can't wait. I can't wait. But thank you again for inviting me. It's amazing.
Thank you
It's
so much, Reverend Coleman. And you have a
amazing.
good night.
You too, my dear. Take care. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.